Hello, mystery readers. I'm Alexandra Amore. This is It's a Mystery Podcast, and I'm here today with Darryl Donaghue. Hi, Darryl.
Hi, how you doing?
Very well. How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm very excited to have you on the show today. So let me give our listeners a bit of an introduction to you. Darryl is a former British detective who now writes crime fiction novels. He quit the police 2 years ago to concentrate on writing, and now independently publishes the Sarah Gladstone thriller series via Amazon and all the other ebook retailers. The series offers a realistic, modern view of policing from the unique perspective of a young police officer starting her career. He is currently working on the third book in the series, which will be out soon. So we'll look forward to that. And we should point out as well, right off the top, why don't we, that there's a short story, a Sarah Gladstone short story available on your website. So people can check that out if they want to. And the first book in the series is free.
That's right.
So people can really get a feel for what Sarah's like.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about her? So she's a mother and a wife and a young PC, as you say in the UK, when she starts out.
Yeah, so she is 33 years old, and she's got twin girls, sort of a happy family situation. She's just started in the police, so in Journal of Sin, which is the first book, she's about 2 years into her service at that point, so she's not a detective yet. And the short story gives you an insight into sort of her first day out as a uniformed officer. So the idea of the series is we're going to watch her career grow. As each book goes on, she's going to become more experienced, and in the second book she starts her detective training. So really it's about a different perspective, a perspective we're not used to from the crime fiction genre, because a lot of crime fiction, as I'm sure you know, is kind of from that position of the old, bitter detective, broken family, broken home, prescription list as long as his arm, that kind of thing. And he's already got his problems. And is it a bit dark? Sorry. And the
as you predicted, the sun is going away.
It is, yeah. This is season number 2. We've just done summer in London. That was 5 minutes, and now we're back into autumn. Sorry. So and you know, it's the reason we see so many of those characters is because they are popular. You know, the kind of broken past is a compelling story. Whereas I wanted to kind of take it back a little bit and sort of show that how the job can affect people. You know, a lot of people come with the best intentions. You ask a lot of new officers, it's very much, I want to make a difference, and it's very optimistic. And that's a side we don't really see reflected much in fiction. So I wanted to take it from there and then show, and kind of the big question of the series is, you know, can you survive when you're dealing with that kind of stuff? Can you survive? Can you make it out with your family intact? What's important? You know, with the big calls, what's important? What do you put first? You know, and that's kind of the idea behind it, and it's off to a good start. You know, like I say, second book now, I'm working on the third. I've got the first sort of 7 plots already down, so
wow.
It's a case of, you know, getting out there, and readers are responding well so far, which is good.
Yeah, that's great. And so in your head, then, do you know whether Sarah makes it through without becoming bitter or ruining her family?
I kind of know the road she's on. But I have a feeling she's going to tell me how she wants to drive it. So,
okay. Yeah.
You know, you start off with the best intentions, and you know, the more time you spend with your characters, the more they inform the story. So I got an idea of the challenges she's going to face, how she tackles them. She'll tell me along the way.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, so how much of your experience as a detective is going into the books? I imagine quite a bit, but.
Yeah, quite a bit. I was a detective for 9 years, so I kind of have been on the path Sarah's on. Mm-hmm. And it's as accurate as it can be without bogging down the story. Anyone who's worked in the police will tell you there's a lot of delays, there's a lot of things that if you actually had an genuinely accurate story with full police procedure, I think it'd be about 1,000 pages long. We used to have a joke in the office that if you wanted to have a TV show that had accurate police procedure, the DVD would have to have deleted scenes of 30 hours of people just typing and, and waiting for results and all of that. So there's a little bit of poetic license, of course, but you know, it's accurate. It's set contemporary, so it's set in the last few years, so it's accurate to the procedure. And of course, as that goes on, I've still got friends in the force that will keep me up to date or tell me when I've gone wrong. It's also the political climate as well. Anyone in the UK will know that the police service has taken a lot of cuts over the years with our Conservative government. So it's all how those things have affected the service and the victims. So it's telling, a poignant story for our times as well about the differences between sort of now and what some would consider the golden era back in the day. So it's drawing on a lot of modern themes, and it's things that people will recognise as the series goes on, from the news, from the big events and things like that. So it's definitely very much grounded in reality, with enough thrills to make it an exciting page turner.
Oh, nice. I noticed one of the things you mentioned in the description of the second book is that Sarah has been fast-tracked into a detective training, and that the training was originally, I think, 2 years long, and they've crammed it down into 3 months.
Yeah.
And I imagine that kind of bureaucratic decision that looks good on paper but isn't all that great in reality happens all the time.
There's a lot of that. Sadly, a lot of policing, I'm sure all over the world, is very much statistic based. Mm-hmm. They want the numbers, they want the arrests, they want the bums on seats. They want the big announcements. We've got this many officers doing this and again, it raises questions as to is it a job that can be run like a business? Is it the kind of service that you can cut corners on, and how far is too far? There's going to be a level of there's going to come to a point where it's just not providing the service it's fit for or should be fit for. So it tackles all of those things and kind of gives an idea of the different mentalities within the job. Mm-hmm. Because policing, we're not always represented fairly. You sometimes get the very, very negative side of it. You sometimes get the very, very gung-ho cowboy side of it. And, people fall along a sliding scale in the middle. So I kind of want to capture those niche elements there that maybe haven't been represented before and represent the people I've worked with. People of all ages, all backgrounds, all genders, all everything, pooling a range of skills to get the job done as best they can. Yes. Despite internal and external forces trying to stop them.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I read in the bio on your website that writing seems to have been your first love. And then you were kind of pulled away from that. You got a degree in criminal psychology. Yeah. And I love the description you made on your website of one of your teachers, when you handed in a short story, accused you of plagiarism, which, as you say, was a fantastic...
Not that I'm bitter, but I still mention it at 34 years old.
Right, yes, yeah, exactly.
I'm over it, though, of course.
Yes, of course. But what a compliment, really, as you say.
Yeah. I think so. It's one of those things that I think, like a lot of stuff, when you grow up, you just lose track of time.
Yeah.
Other priorities kick in. I used to read a lot as a kid, and that's kind of English at A-level and GCSE in school gave me the chance to write. And you do. It's like, there's always those moments where you think kind of were turning points. Someone could have said something really, really positive and kind of gone, yeah, I'm going to do this forever, or not. But then you've got to kind of, as you get older, you just look at it and twist it all around and say, well, actually, that's a pretty good compliment.
Yeah.
May not have seemed that way at the time with the red pen all over the bottom.
Of course, yeah.
And that's it. And then you kind of come around to the fact that writing is something I did like to do. I still wrote short stories even when I was in the police, but I just couldn't get the momentum up for a full novel. Long hours, of course, night shifts, those kind of things. And when you're writing novels, you really have to put in that almost daily practice to get the momentum up and get the project moving. Yeah. And if you can't do that because you're half asleep during the day or you've been at work for the last 26 hours, you're never going to get that book finished. So it was something I knew I needed to devote a lot to.
Yeah, devote some time
to get done. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And did you feel that during your career in the police that your optimism waned or changed at all?
Regarding my sort of attitude to the job.
Yeah, your attitude to the job, like.
Yeah, I think everything becomes run of the mill at some point. No matter how exciting something starts off or how dedicated you are to it, it will become run of the mill, and then it goes from every day being excited, going in, getting things done because every day is different. So every so often really important job will come along that piques your interest, or it's a particularly nasty job, or you get to help someone out of a horrible situation, and those little ones keep you going. Um, but yeah, like everything, it does become run of the mill over time. A lot of paperwork, a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But you hold on to those important jobs where the big cases, the big trials, the vulnerable victims, because that's really why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I have to say, being a writer and being a police officer, I almost can't think of two more disparate careers. Writer sitting alone, lots in your head,
mm,
beavering away, and then a police officer being, out with the public,
yeah,
exposed to danger, all that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's true. But the job changes dramatically between uniform work and detective work. So
Mm.
for your first 2 years, at least in the UK, you have to be on the beat, and we call on the beat, or as a response officer. So you're in uniform, you're doing the blue light runs, the emergency stuff. But then when you take your detective's exam, become a detective, it becomes more almost project focused. Each case is a project in itself. So you're not you're still public facing, but you're not in uniform anymore. You're very much doing one-on-one type things like interviews or witness statements, and all of that. Requires a lot of concentration and sitting down. So suspect interviews, it will be you and the suspect and their solicitor, and it's very much a very grounded experience compared to the running around on the Saturday nights with all the drunkards.
Right.
It's a very more grounded, more cerebral experience. You've got more time to reflect on your case, so you can spend a day um, building your evidence and things like that, or liaising with forensic teams, and then you try and find that precious time to sit down and assess everything. So in the same way as writing a novel, it's a big, long project that you have to constantly reassess, constantly look at, get advice on, specialist advice. It used to be forensic teams or ballistics teams. Now it's editors and copywriters.
Right.
And they're equally frustrated with me as scientists were.
Yes.
So yeah, there are things that lend itself to both things, and of course there's the dealing with human behaviour all the time. Human behaviour at its best and worst. You see some really heroic things in the police, and you see people at very, very low points, and people who are very, very angry. You get a range of emotional experience which you
Mm-hmm.
can draw on
Mm-hmm.
and then use in books.
Yes, yeah. That was the thing that struck me when I saw that you had a degree in criminal psychology. I thought, oh, you know, writing and policing both are about people
Yeah,
at their
absolutely.
heart. That's really what they're about. And
Yeah.
were there any specific, not that you have to tell us, but were there any specific things, like unique events that happened in your policing career that you've woven into your books?
Not at the moment. There's a story coming later in the series
Hmm.
that will have a very libelous note, a very um, yeah, very close to the bone type storyline. But mostly, I think the key thing for me is the culture, the policing culture, and uh, just the day to day life that I can bring to the
Hmm.
stories of how it affects police officers and the victims too. And not just when I say victims, I don't mean sort of people that report things to police. In a lot of ways, the suspects we deal with and the criminals we deal with are victims in their own right. They haven't, again, we used to being given the stories about serial killers, and, they're going to come and get us in the night and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, that is obviously exciting to read and watch on the big screen. But most criminals you see are people that have made terrible choices
Hmm.
and have more often than not, started in terrible positions
Hmm.
in their lives. And from that environment and situation comes these awful choices that send them down and down and down and down. And at some point, they feel there's a point of no return. Of course, along that process, sadly, police and then other people come along and label them a criminal, which doesn't help anything either. So it's kind of trying to take. The books are trying to sort of look at that angle as well and say, yeah, they're scary people, they're dangerous. The books are exciting, the books have compelling villains, but I want it to be a series that explores villainy in a way that makes it maybe terrifying because it's what and how our society creates them, rather than these kind of blind, rage filled people. There's always a reason. And one of Sarah's big selling points and what a lot of readers like about her is that she looks for those reasons and she tries to understand those reasons.
Oh, okay.
So the short story that you get free if you sign up to the mailing list is pretty much about that. It's her on her first day out, and she's with an older kind of uniformed tutor who has one way of viewing criminals and criminality, and she sees it in a different way. So it's kind of that story sets off one of the key themes of the series.
Mm-hmm. I thought the premise for the first book was really interesting in that there's been, she's kind of cut off from everybody else. She's by herself in a village, is that right? And
Yeah, that's right.
There's been a storm, and so she has to figure things out on her own. And I just, as a writer myself, I just thought that was such a great premise, an inciting incident, as Sean Coyne would say, to get a story rolling, and for her to kind of prove herself, because you mentioned in one of the descriptions all her bosses and stuff sort of try to thwart her at every turn and don't believe her. Is that right?
Yeah, there's she's sort of cut off in a storm. It's kind of set slightly in north of England, which sadly has regular storms and flooding. And a priest's murdered, and she's there on her own. And initially, rather than being the hero running to the rescue, she just wants to leave and say, look, we can deal with this another way. I need to get home, blah, blah, blah. She's got kids.
Yeah.
And she's very new in the job. But of course, she's thrust into the limelight unwillingly and has to deal with an entire murder investigation as best she can without advice or anything like that. So when in the first novel, we see her very much struggling. So the readers know straight away she's not some superwoman or some superhero cop character. She's someone with very human problems that makes mistakes and gets through. And it sets her character up quite well for the rest of the books, where we see that very human side of her. And of all the emails I get from readers, that's generally what they like the most. It's a character they can relate to, that she's stuck in a situation and she's not, tackling it as best she can, because that's kind of what we're all like. We've all been at work where we felt a bit like an imposter, and
yes,
and she kind of brings that out in the first book.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so she's in the north of England. It's a fictional town called Maidenwood, correct?
Yeah, the second book set in Maidenwood. That's sort of her first posting as a detective. So in the second book, she's working out of a police station. She's very much has all the tools at her disposal and a tutor and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, Maidenwood was this fictional town. It's a small town, so kind of it's based on kind of small English country towns, but it's very much fictional.
Mm-hmm. And you must have seen. I mean, I'm intrigued that she has 2 children. Because I almost can't think of a more difficult job to do for a woman when you have kids. In terms of time, the time that she must have to spend away from them, because it's not just 9 to 5. And then also in terms of the mental toll that the job must take.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I wanted to do that to show that side of it, really. Obviously, I've worked alongside a lot of police officers with kids, a lot of female police officers with kids, very successful career women that do it all. And I wanted her to have that, because it adds another element to her consideration about how she deals with the job and what she does. Because every day, when you have the decision: do you stay on and do that little bit extra for the victims? Do you stay on and try and arrest that suspect, or do you go home to your family? And with the pressure of all of that, and generally the pressure that comes from inside to do the right thing, they're all very, very tough decisions. So you add elements of children there and a husband and all of those things. You're going to be kind of looking at sort of the pressure from different angles. And that's what I kind of want. As much as I like her, I want her to be challenged. And I want her to go through these things and show people what their life is like.
Yes, and that makes for interesting stories, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's getting into the lifestyle and the culture of sort of modern policing. Again, there's plenty of heroes out there in novels and movies that will swing in, save the day, and everything's shiny and golden. But it's just not going to be like that in this series. It's going to be it's going to be challenging, and that's important because it's real.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So one final question. What drew Sarah into policing?
Originally, well, uh, she had her children and she wanted something more out of life, really. And you see in the second book, maybe her husband's not of the same mind, but she wants to give an example to her kids about being a career woman and being something being someone that makes a difference to the world. And she didn't want to be, and I think there's a line in the first book where she didn't want to be one of those parents that kind of has children and then relaxes into just motherhood. She kind of thinks motherhood for her is being a living example for the kids, and not, and then just showing them what you can have a full life, you can have all of those things. So she wanted something different. She'd worked in kind of odd jobs in banks and things before, and she wanted to try something different. It's pretty much her angle, and then we'll see how her attitude changes as the series goes on.
Yeah. Sounds like she's up for a challenge. She enjoys a challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well, why don't you tell everyone where they can find your books?
Okay. You can find my books on Amazon. The first one is free, Journal of Sin. Also on iTunes and Nook and Kobo and Smashword. So pretty much wherever you are. If you don't have any of those, send me an email at darryldonaghue.com. darryldonaghue@me.com, and I'll find a way to get you a copy, whatever device you read on. Soon in paperbacks and audiobooks as well.
Yes.
So that's free, and then if you want to sign up to the mailing list, which you can do, and a link in that book, you get the free short story as well. And the second book's out for $2.99, I think, in the States, and £2.50 in the UK. So you can keep reading reasonably cheaply.
Yes.
And you have a third one soon, hopefully.
Yeah. Do you have a projected date for that one?
Next couple of months, I think, provisionally. It's coming to the end of the first draft, and then the edits, and then more edits and more edits, as we know. I'm doing audiobook auditions at the moment. They finish on Friday. So soon enough, I will have an audio narrator.
Fantastic.
Which is very exciting.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's great. And so we're recording this April 2016, so probably summer 2016, the third book will be out, do you imagine?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Summer's good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Darryl. It's been great talking
to you. Thank you. Lovely.
Take care. Bye.
See you. Bye.